Thank you. Right. Good evening and welcome to this meeting of South Oxfordshire's Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Peter Dragonetti and I'm meeting in David Brotherton's absence. This meeting is being held at our office in Abbey House, Abingdon. Voting members are here in person as required. Officers and public meetings. The bells. But officers and public speakers are able to join remotely if they wish through Microsoft Teams. The meeting is being streamed live on the Council's YouTube channel for public viewing. Three procedural matters. In the unlikely event that a voting member has not heard all the speakers and the debate, the member must inform the chair. And when this is the case, they should not propose a motion, participate in the debate or vote on the application. For anyone who's joining remotely, when you're not speaking, please ensure your microphone is muted and your camera is off. If you share a presentation, please stop sharing as soon as it is not needed. Public speakers must only have their camera on and be unmuted when addressing the committee or answering questions. If councillors wish to ask a question, please raise your hand. Housekeeping, evacuation, please. Evacuation procedure in the event of emergencies. Evacuate the building by the nearest exit, which is in the corridor just out there, and stands at 70.9. Please everyone ensure their mobile phone and any other devices are switched to silent during the meeting. And members who wish to leave the meeting after the application has been debated are welcome to do so via the fire exit I previously pointed out. When the meeting is ended, I'll ask for confirmation the live stream has ended, and at that point, please leave the virtual meeting if you're joining remotely, or make your way out of the building, remembering to sign out. And finally, this is a meeting in public and not a public meeting. And any members of the public attending in person and virtually, ensure they do not shout out or disrupt the committee's deliberations outside those who have registered to speak in their allotted slots. So we now turn to the agenda. And do we have any apologies for absence areas?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for absence were received from Councillors David Brotherton, Ali Gordon-Creed, who substituted for Councillor James Norman, Acton MacDonald, Ben Manning, and Sam James Laurie.
Thank you very much. Minutes of the previous meeting. We will adopt and sign as correct records. The planning committee minutes of meetings held on the 3rd and the 16th of April 2024. All those in favour of this motion to adopt them? Propose. Someone like to propose it? And all those in favour?
Thank you, Chair.
Item 4, declarations of interest. Are there any disclosable pecuniary interests, other registrable interests, or non-registrable interests, or any conflicts of interest in respect of items on the agenda this evening? I see none. Okay, thank you very much. So we now urgent business. Is there any urgent business, Kathy, we need to consider?
No urgent business, Chair. Thank you.
Great. Okay, we now go on to the public participation on these development applications. Now I'm going to change the order of the agenda slightly because there's been desire for a site visit on item 8 of the agenda, Satwell House, Satwell. So I will bring that one forward first, and if we would like to consider a motion, a member would like to propose a motion to take a site visit, we will consider that, and if we pass that motion, this will not be on the agenda. This will not be discussed any further this evening. So, Councillor Casey Rahay, do you have any seconders for that motion to have a site visit? Councillor Norman, do you want to speak, or should we just?
Yeah, I would just like to say that I thought that it's had a high number of responses to this application, and I felt that to really appreciate a landscape application such as this, I really wanted to be there. I thought the diagrams were quite helpful, but they didn't really give me the full sense of the impact of this application, and I think a visit would be really beneficial.
Thanks very much. There's any debate on this? No?
Yeah, just to reinforce that, this is the character of the landscape is central to this application, and the potential damage to the national landscape. So I think a site visit would be essential.
Okay. Okay, in that case, we'll go to a vote. All those in favour of the motion to have a site visit on this one? Oh, that's fairly conclusive. Thank you very much. So that item will not be considered this evening. It will be discussed. We'll have a site visit and it will be discussed at a meeting at a later date. So I'm sorry, all those everyone who's kindly come along. I'm all parish council, neighbours, and the applicants and representatives. So I'm sorry, but that's in the interest of having a good decision. Very much. So we'll move next on to what was item 7. E22 S1326, the redevelopment of part of the site, Sherburn Road, Watlington, the erection of 25 age-restricted dwellings for people aged 55 and over, including communal facilities. So then we have Kathy, I think you're
It's Catherine.
going to tell us all about it.
Yes, thank you. To begin with an update, the applicant has submitted a construction traffic management plan, which Oxfordshire County Council has confirmed is acceptable with 2 minor additions. I've checked the latest report they've submitted and those additions have been made. Therefore, condition 10 in your report can be changed to a compliance condition referencing construction traffic management plan revision B dated the 10th of May 2024. And that will be a compliance condition rather than a requirement to submit construction traffic management plan. Members may also have received written objection from Sherburn Parish Council. The key points in summary are that a care home is desperately needed in Watlington. Burton is an other village and has no housing requirement allocated to it. Concern regarding density proposed, harm to the children's national landscape, insufficient weight given to the impact of heritage assets. There is no bus service, so occupants will be reliant on the private car, and a concern about additional burden on healthcare and GP services. Actually, so. So this is an application for 25 age-restricted dwellings. That's restricted to age 55 and over, located on the edge of Watlington within Burton Parish. So can you make out the very small yellow blob? That was just to sort of give you a wider context that Watlington is to the south there, and the site immediately joins the Watlington Recreation Ground. To the northwest, you can see the village of Burton. To the northeast is Sherburn, and the registered park and garden is enclosed on this map. Comes down to the yellow road there with the green diamonds. The field immediately to the west of the site has resolution to grant outline planning permission for up to 100 dwellings. The site is part of a wider site that received planning permission in 2019 for 37 age-restricted retirement units, 4 staff accommodation and a care home. The retirement units, which are located to the north, and I'll show you that in a bit, have been built out and they're largely occupied. The proposed application is located on what was to be the site of the care home. I'll take you through some photographs. As you can see, the site at the moment is being used as a compound for sort of phase 1. This is looking south towards the boundary with Watlington Recreation Ground. It's looking west, and beyond that fence there is the field mentioned with resolution to grant for up to 100 dwellings. These are some of the phase 1 developments. Just the other side of that fence there is the access road. This is a little site to the north which has planning permission for 3 dwellings. This is phase 1 again, the public open space, and then just a few photos to sort of show you the character and appearance of what's already immediately joining the site. As you can see, it's all 2-storey So this shows the more immediate context. To the west, you can see there the mock-up of the up to 100 dwellings, and also it shows there the Watlington Edge Road. You can see coming around to the north. And you can there also see the phase 1 development that I've just shown you to the north, and the little white triangle there, which is it was a bungalow be demolished and erection of 3 dwellings. You'll note that phase 1 development and the Edge Road are located between the site and the Sherburn Castle Registered Park Gardens and Conservation Area. So the proposed development would be in keeping with the wider site in terms of its form, layout, scale and appearance. During the course of the application, the scheme was amended to break up the massing of the building into different blocks. You've obviously got the elevations in your. I thought it might be useful to show you some 3D drawings to sort of show it in the context. So the darker area there is the proposal, and the sort of more faint is the existing phase 1. And these just sort of show you how they fit in. This is taken looking at the site from the access road. When compared to the approved care home scheme, which this plan shows quite nicely there on the left, you can see there's an improvement in terms of the visual impact because the built form is broken up more, and it's more in keeping with the character and appearance of phase 1. A financial viability appraisal has been submitted with this application to support the case that the proposed development cannot provide or contribute towards affordable housing. This report has been scrutinised by independent viability consultants appointed by the council who concur with the conclusion. It's very rare to find a scheme that ticks every box and meets every requirement of every policy, particularly for major schemes. So that's why as decision makers, we have to carefully consider the planning balance, harm versus benefit, whether the scheme complies with the development plan as a whole. So whilst the proposal is contrary to policy H9 of the local plan, the benefit of providing older persons accommodation should be given significant weight. As noted in the report, there is an acute need nationally for such accommodation. I also took a look at the Oxfordshire Strategic Housing Market Assessment, SHMAR, which shows that in 2011, over a quarter of the population of the county was over 55, and the population projections show that this is set to increase by almost 50% by 2031. The SHMAR also shows that 81% of pensioner households in the district live in owner-occupied accommodation, and that 61% of dwellings across the county are what we would term under-occupied. So accommodation such as the proposed offers the opportunity for downsizing, meeting changing needs, whilst freeing up much needed family housing. And the local plan recognises this need in policy H13 and the supporting text, which states that the private sector is a key player in bringing forward specialist schemes for older people, and full encouragement is given to such schemes on sites close to public transport, local shops and facilities. Certain parish councillors commented that the applicant should build a care home, for which they have planning permission, and this application should be refused. Any person has a right to make a planning application and have it determined based on its merits. There is no policy justification for refusing an application based on a preferred scheme that already has permission. If the scheme put forward is acceptable, having regard to the development plan and material considerations, then it should be approved. The proposed residential use is supported by the local plan and neighbourhood plan, and is therefore acceptable in principle, and there are no technical objections to the proposal. In my opinion, the benefits of the proposal outweigh the identified harm, and therefore I recommend that planning permission is granted.
Thank you very much. Okay, we now turn to representatives of Colin Ludlow from Burton Parish Council. Are you there, Colin? There it is. Hello, right, you ready? And unmute, please.
Sorry, I already had. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Okay,
Great,
you'll have
okay.
5 minutes.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you very much for this opportunity. The parish council had already submitted its writing its objections to this proposal and the various previous iterations of that. I take those as read and don't wish to repeat them, though they were slightly summarised by Sherburn in their response read earlier. What I do wish to highlight is the anger and resentment felt by the community about this application, which has provoked deep disillusion with the entire planning process. Between 2016 and 2018, the small parish of Purton spent a huge amount of time and effort preparing a neighbourhood plan in the hope that it would ensure that any developments in the parish, which had no actual requirement for housing in the district's local plan, would be appropriate and proportionate. The made neighbourhood plan therefore included a specific policy for the entire Per 1 site, which proposed residential development of around 15 units. The application you have before you is for 25 units on an area that equates to roughly a quarter of that site, 41 dwellings having already been built on the remaining part of it. The neighbourhood plan also included stipulations about consulting with the parish concerning any proposals for the site. And as you will note in paragraph 711 of the officer's report, the developer did indeed hold meetings prior to submitting their application. However, what the report omits to mention is that what these meetings were about was building a care home on the site, accompanied by 37 assisted living units that would be supported by its resources. Recognising the social amenity and welcome employment that this would provide, the community therefore set aside its neighbourhood plan and accepted the principle of the application, with reservations only being expressed about building mass and density. The Reserve Matters application was duly approved in July 2020, but after starting to build its residential units, the applicant announced in the spring of the following year that they could not find an operator to take on a care home, and applied to build 34 affordable apartments on that area of the site instead. This prompted outrage among the local community, many of whom wrote to express their fierce opposition to the new plan. The application was duly refused in the wake of this reaction, and that refusal was upheld when the applicant took the case to appeal. Undeterred, the developers have now come back with an application for 25 retirement dwellings, but you will note that it includes no provision whatever for affordable housing, as this is now apparently deemed not to be financially viable. To add insult to injury, you will also note in paragraph 757 of the officer's report, which you alluded to earlier, that the applicant does now concede, however, that a care home operator could be found. But rather than drop this application and build one, they would rather proceed with their revised plan instead. You'll not be surprised to learn that this has all provoked deep cynicism in the parish about the applicant's behaviour, and a common belief that this is what the developer wished to do all along, the care home serving simply as a Trojan horse to ease the progress of an application that was manifestly against policy through the planning system. Sadly, though, Purton Parish Council acknowledges that the inspector's ill-judged comments about density and the officer's embarrassed observations in paragraph 760 concerning the applicant's right to submit this new application make it hard for the committee to refuse it. Approving it, however, will mean the parish having to accept 66 dwellings on a site which its neighbourhood plan stipulated was suitable for no more than 20, and without, as far as we can see, the scheme now providing any live-in staff on site to provide such assistance as the residents in their late 50s and upwards may require. We would certainly encourage you to inquire how many of the units that have already been built and were allocated for staff are actually being used for staff accommodation. Purton Parish Council strongly suspects that this will not be the last application that this committee receives that makes a mockery of our neighbourhood plan. We would therefore respectfully request that it provides the community with the support it needs in the future, even if it does not feel able to
30 seconds.
this evening. Thank you, I'm finished.
Thank you much, Mr. Ludlow. Are there any questions for Mr. Ludlow or Purton Parish Council? I see none, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we're now going to our next speaker. which is Matthew Parry, who's an agent for Beechcroft Developments. There you are. So, yeah, President, yes, please. We'll have 5 minutes when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, councillors. As you just heard, my name is Matthew Parry and I'm the Planning Manager for Beechcroft Developments. First of all, I just wanted to thank the council's planning officers for their efforts in assessing the application and working proactively to help progress these proposals through to the scheme before you today. We welcome the recommendation of officers in the committee report, which we feel is based on an accurate, balanced assessment of our proposals. As some of you may know, Beechcroft Developments is a specialist older persons housing developer based nearby in Wallingford, which has successfully delivered a range of older persons housing across the district over recent years, including our new retirement housing development on land adjacent to this application site, a site we call Castle Gardens. This retirement housing has been very successful and reflects a significant need for such housing in the locality, with just 3 out of the 41 houses and apartments now unsold. We currently have 113 people registered on our database as being interested in one of the new homes proposed on this application, and most live within 5 miles of the site or have children living locally. The application proposes 25 new retirement dwellings designed as a logical and cohesive addition to the 41 homes already constructed as part of our Castle Gardens development, all of which is on land allocated for residential development in the Purton Neighbourhood Plan. Beechcroft has worked proactively with council officers to ensure that the scheme before you today represents a high-quality, sustainable development with no matters of concern raised by any officer or technical consultee. To this end, as you heard from the planning officer, the design and layout of the proposed development has been amended during the course of the application to respond to comments made by the council's planning, landscape, drainage and urban design officers, such that there's no officer objection to any element of the proposals. As your officers conclude, the scale and form of development is in keeping with the development on our adjoining Castle Gardens site and the surrounding area, and has a lower impact on the landscape, including the setting of the Chilterns National Landscape, than if the extant care home was built out. Members will note that there's just one objection from a statutory consultee, Purton Parish Council, and only one other third-party objection. There are no objections from any resident of either Purton or Watlington. Purton Parish Council has said in its response to the second consultation that the application proposals provide no social or economic benefit. It also states that the approved care home should be built out as there is a significant local need for it. In contrast, the care home permission stands unimplemented due to the lack of need for additional care home bed spaces in the immediate locality, and consequently the lack of market interest from care home operators. The land therefore currently provides no public benefit whatsoever. Moreover, the care home development will not generate any SIL or other grant payment to the local authority. The proposed retirement housing development, however, which until 2023 would have been exempt from SIL, would now provide a full SIL contribution following the council's adoption of a revised SIL charging schedule last year. The district council would receive nearly £529,000 of SIL as a result of this proposed development, of which Purton Parish Council would expect to receive about £132,000 of that. In addition, the district and county councils would also receive over £196,000 between them in the new homes bonus, something it would not have received from a care home development. These contributions represent significant benefits for the local community, which in turn would be expected to be put towards socially and environmentally beneficial infrastructure. In terms of wider social benefits, in addition to providing additional and improved communal facilities for the existing residents of our Castle Gardens development, national planning policy places increasing emphasis on the importance of planning for and meeting the housing needs of older people. The government guidance states that local authorities should take a positive approach to schemes that seek to address unmet local need for specialist older persons housing. This central government support is in part reflected in South Oxfordshire's local plan, which encourages specialist older persons housing in sustainable locations such as the application site. Despite the local plans in principle support for older persons housing, evidence that we have submitted as part of this planning application shows a current need for at least 568 additional retirement homes in the district, which could rise to 894
You have 30 seconds
by
remaining.
2035 if supply does not exist, does not increase. In terms of viability, our existing Castle Gardens developments already made an off-site payment to the District Council of £1.3 million towards affordable housing. This financial contribution was generated when retirement housing was exempt from SIL. We're disappointed to note that so far only 7,700 of that has been spent. As previously stated, the current planning application will make a substantial SIL contribution, which has been included in the viability assessment submitted with this planning application and endorsed by the Council's appointed independent experts. This SIL contribution is one of the reasons.
Mr. Pike, could you finish your sentence?
Why the development is now unable to provide a financial contribution towards affordable housing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions for Barry? Oh, that's all us.
Tell me, Mr. Parry, do Beechcroft run care homes?
No.
Do they build care homes?
No.
Do they? So the planning permission you have for the care home, you say, I think someone said, you didn't have an operator, but there would now be an operator.
That's correct. So when the application was made in 2019, the outline application across the whole site, the proposal was for Sanctuary Care, which currently operate the care home on Hilltop Road. The proposal was for them to relocate onto the application site. They eventually decided to stay put for financial reasons, and therefore the operator that we did have on board to develop that part of the site pulled out. And since then, we haven't been able to find an operator to take on and deliver the care home. In practice, there is only need for one care home in an area the size and a town the size of Watkinson, and that need is being taken up by the Sanctuary Care. This is not viable to proceed, and because of the lack of need, there hasn't been any interest on the market from the care home operator.
So, Casey Mahay.
Can you tell me how, apart from the age restriction of 55 and over, how is this development appropriate for older people? I don't believe there's any provision for staff on site.
It includes an estate manager on site, so they are permanently on site, monitoring and maintaining the development. We have a guest suite and a residence lounge, which is a communal space for the residents. And in essence, it's an older person's community overseen by an on-site estate manager that is restricted in age. And with that age restriction comes other design features that make it more suitable for older person's housing. So the accommodation, for example, is built to be more suitable for older people. So it needs less adaptation as they age, which means they're far less likely to need to go into care homes, for example, which is a government objective, which is for people to stay in their own homes for as long as possible. And the other thing that you tend to get on retirement developments is far less traffic, far less car ownership, because typically there's only one car per one or two residents of each dwelling or apartment. So there are some specifics to it, including other things would be smaller gardens, for example. A lot of the older residents don't like the maintenance of having large gardens to look after, and that's dealt with as part of the wider estate management function. And there is then an overarching management company that deals with all aspects of site maintenance for them.
Good. Yes.
Councillor Keats Ryan, this is one of the things that concerns me about this model, actually, is the estate management side of it. You know, the continually having to pay for that, the escalating costs of those. And there are many examples being cited in the press now about these things. They're very attractive initially, but once the person moves on, dies or whatever, they are very, very difficult to sell. I mean, I'm dealing with somebody at the moment who's had an issue in Wallingford. I'm not actually one of yours, I don't think, but is finding it impossible to sell. I mean, she actually wants to move out and go somewhere else. I really am becoming increasingly sceptical of this model because of the ongoing fees and all the rest of it. And I'm not at all sure we should be encouraging proliferation of them. Anyway.
Actually, have a question.
Well, yeah, I mean, what would you say in response to that, basically?
What I would say is when the properties, when they're sold, are sold on very, very, very long leases. And then there's no restriction then on who they can be sold to, unlike some developers, they have to be sold back to the actual developer. So they can be sold to anybody as long as they accord with the age restriction that's in place. And the maintenance fees are not paid to Beechcroft. The land is transferred to a charity called Elm that then only charges the cost of maintenance at the cost that it costs them. So there's no profit whatsoever on the maintenance. And that's all secured within the within covenants as part of the sale. There's no profit made whatsoever on maintenance for Beechcroft properties.
Right, okay, well, that sounds good from you. I don't know if that's happening elsewhere, but really.
Right. That's a Sadler.
Yes, could you just clarify that Castle Gardens is not adjacent to this site, but actually in Chirton, is that right?
No, this is the development before you here that's greyed out. It's what we refer to as Castle Gardens. That's what we refer to it as a developer when we're selling properties. Yes, Castle Gardens. That's what the name for our development.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted
It's nothing more than that.
clarity on that. And secondly, how do you feel about the fact that it does conflict with Pearson's neighbourhood plan, as they claim, you know, as the parish councillor claims there?
I mean, the Purton Parish Council neighbourhood plan makes reference to 50 to 20 dwellings, I believe, on this application site. That is a strikingly low density for a development this size. Bearing in mind there was a pre-existing large storage building on site. The density that we are proposing to develop at, and of which we have already developed at, we also need to take into account that because of the type of development that it is mostly apartments. So you're not going to be comparing 30 dwellings per hectare of houses. It's a different metric that we use for apartments, where they're over 2 stories. They make more efficient use of the land, and besides, I think we also need to bear in mind that there is a care home approved on the site, and the amount of built development has already been established. In fact, the actual quantum of built development on the site was reduced as part of this development, as opposed to what was approved for the care home. So the principle of developing buildings of a similar scale, albeit this is less, has already been established by the planning commission. It's already been granted, and that was not an issue found unacceptable by the Inspector of Appeal.
Thank you very much. Councillor Norman.
Is there a pavement on the road to Washington, or
Yes.
other footpath or cycleway?
Yes, there is a footway that leads into
That's a pavement all the way.
Yes.
I see no further questions, so thank you very much, Mr. Parry. And that's the end of our public speakers. I think we have our board councillor here, do we? No. So we're now turn to questions for the officer. Any questions we need to clarity on? Nice. Yes, Councillor Norman.
Do you feel that Purton's parish council's objections have any validity to them?
Well, I can see there's been a lot of history on this site. I'm fairly new to it. I just wanted to come back on the point about sort of the number of dwellings in the neighbourhood plan. So policy H1 in the neighbourhood plan just talks about it talks it refers to the density that would not have an adverse effect on the character of the area and the parish's heritage assets. It's policy SA1, I believe, that refers to 15 dwellings. And when I've read the neighbourhood plan, the 15 dwellings seems to come from a resident survey. So it's not based on an assessment of what the site can accommodate or any form of need. It seems to have literally been generated from sort of local responses. So I think that's worth bearing in mind. And also, as Mr. Parry said, that there is an extant care home on the site, and that material consideration sort of has changed how you might consider it.
Thank you much. Oh, Councillor Arlott.
Can you remind me what the figure was for the SIL payments? Generally paid
It-
project, was it 500?
Yeah, so
thousand?
over 500,000.
Yeah, I think it's over 500,000.
Yes, that sounds right.
525,825 pounds.
2.6.
You're happy with that, sir, Councillor Arlott? Okay. That's quite a lot of money. There you are.
Just to confirm that what the applicant said about, there's a paved and safe walking route from here to Watlington.
Yes.
So the 700 metres is a reasonable distance.
Yes, and that is also referenced in the neighbourhood plan, that there is that this is a sustainable location and that there is a footway leading all the way to.
Any further questions for Councillor Sadler?
Yeah, so Mr. Parry mentioned the fact that there'd be no other objections, but of course, at the moment, that's sort of greenfield site almost, isn't it? Because it's in, apart from the Castle Gardens development, which I just learned is that bit there, there really isn't anything else around there. So you know, the fact that it's only had an objection from Pearson Council is not that surprising, really, is it?
It's not greenfield. It's before any of the site was built out. It was an old MOD site, and there was a big warehouse there. So even before the phase 1 development, it was a brownfield site, and I believe there was a lot of local objection at that stage, sort of compared to now, when like you said, that we haven't had any sort of third-party objections to it. And as shown on the plan there, the context of the area is due to change with other planning permissions that have been granted, the 100 dwellings and the edge road as well.
Thank you very much. I see no further questions for the officers, so thank you very much, let's open it for to debate.
Yeah, so I think I sympathise with the parish. I think neighbourhood plans, which are the brainchild of our local MP, are misleading at best, and they set up the parish council to believe that they have slightly more autonomy than actually often transpires. It's essential you do it because your SIL money that you get is increased. That's true, isn't it? If you have a local plan active, you get more SIL than you would otherwise. That's true. Yeah.
Yes, you get 25%. As opposed to, I think it's 15 if you don't.
Yes. So you're getting 10% extra SIL, which in this case is a substantial amount of money. So it's a no-brainer for parishes to do it. But in actual fact, you know, they have less autonomy than I think they're given, than they're led to believe, after what can often be years of diligent hard work from members of the community. You know, I think the planning system fundamentally from the ground up is broken. But we are where we are, and I am the cabinet member for adult social care on Oxfordshire County Council, and I'd just like to confirm what both our officers and the gentleman from the developer has said, that we as a county do not need more care homes. We are massively oversubscribed with care homes. What we do need is assisted living housing, and this isn't that, but this is you know, as the officer said, a move in the right direction, providing housing for older people who potentially want to downsize. So where you've got that kind of development, high density with low car, that is for the benefit, because if you have high density, it means there's going to be less pressure elsewhere on genuine greenbelt land. We've got a brownfield site which has been earmarked for development, and so it all seems to align. We're not building a care home, and that's the right thing for the county, and it's sort of that's acknowledged in our own policy documents. It's on a brownfield site with high density and low car, so we're not getting that pressure on the infrastructure elsewhere in the parish and in Wallington. And we're getting seal money, and they will, for the hard work that they've got through from their local plan, will get more of that seal money for the benefit of their community. Now, I can understand their grievance, because when you spend a long time coming up with a local plan, you think you have more autonomy, but it's simply not the case. So that is what happens in reality. So for me, I would support.
Yes. Okay. Thank you much. Any wishes before we consider a motion? Does anyone wish to say anything else?
You just put the motion forward.
So sorry.
So you put the motion forward.
So are you proposing a motion?
In summary, I would like to propose the motion. We support this.
Okay. If you have a seconder. That's Larlet.
Yeah, I'm going to second this, but for totally different reasons than Councillor Beard, unfortunately. For one who spent 5 years on a neighbourhood plan. And I totally disagree with the comments he made. And I feel sorry for Purton Parish Council, especially Colin Ludlow. I think he gave an excellent speech. All the way through neighbourhood plans, and I'm not sure if you've ever made one or ever been involved with one, you work with the district council officers, and you might wish to put something in which they said, no, we're not prepared to put that in because the policy so and so, blah, blah. So all the policies in, and I'm going to speak to the Henley one later on through this meeting. So all the way through making a neighbourhood plan, you are working with the council officers here. So to say that they shouldn't hold as much.
I don't say they shouldn't.
I'm going to finish my speech. I never interrupted you. Okay, thank you. So when you look at it, they should hold as much. I used to use the word power as the local plan policies, because they should be similar. Otherwise, they would never be accepted by the district council officers. So. I'm seconding the proposal because I don't think there's anywhere to go. What does concern me, and this is as a council, and probably a lot of other councillors might, we're selling our soul for seal. If that, maybe somebody else will like to quote that another day, because we're selling our soul for seal, we're not getting affordable housing. Now, if we didn't have the seal, we would get affordable housing. So there's something definitely wrong there. So somewhere, I don't know. I'm not sure how you can come over that. So yeah, great, £500 million. So much of that to SODC. The parish gets a wee bit, which they probably don't need it. They've probably got enough still payments to other pieces of land there. And then obviously the county council, where you are as well. They're going to get a large section of that as well. But through that, we're losing affordable housing. So I think someone somewhere should look at that.
Okay,
I haven't finished it.
Should we address the motion rather than general things about
the motion? Why I'm supporting it?
Okay.
So looking, as I say, you mentioned, or someone mentioned, it's a brownfield site. I think Catherine mentioned it's a brownfield site. So we're really between a rock and a hard place here. Already has planned application for a care home, and this is similar, probably like for like. Has sufficient car parking there, according to the gentleman I thought spoke very well as well. That there are numerous people out there who would wish to purchase these properties. Would it affect Purton? Probably only for the reason was that I thought their gentleman said there was only 20 properties on that piece of land there, all told, in their plan. I'm not sure if that's correct or not. But as for density, I think the officer said it's well within the density of this council. So with that, I'll support the motion forward.
Okay, a point of order, just on personal explanation.
Yeah.
Go on then, briefly.
I didn't say that the local neighbourhood plans shouldn't have any validity. I'm saying time and time again that it's obvious that they don't.
That's a bit. I think we moved on a general point to it.
I've made my point.
Okay, thank you very much. So we stick to the item on the agenda, which is this application, and we've heard a proposal to approve it and seconded. So we're now going to a debate. Does anybody else wish to speak? Anybody else wish to speak on this motion? No, I see nobody else. So in that case, You'd like to sum up?
I think I've said all I need to. Added to by councillor.
Okay, in that case, we'll go to a vote. All those in favour of the motion to approve this application, please raise your hand. All those against? Sadler? Okay. That's right, the motion is carried and the application is granted. Okay, we move now on to our next item, which is lots of pages here. P24, page 115. P24, Sandy Acre, Woodperry Road, Beckley. It's well, complicated proposal, so we'll go straight to Paul to explain it all to us.
Thank you, Chair. The application of the four members this evening, the views of the parish council differs from your officer's recommendation that planning permission should be granted. Some members may recall visiting this site in the autumn of 2022, when the council considered an application to retain the original bungalow on the site. That application was ultimately refused. The application before members this evening seeks to vary the wording of a condition of the planning permission for the development of two dwellings on this site. The condition in question relates to the requirement to demolish the existing bungalow. Proposed changes relates to the trigger in the condition to instigate this requirement. For the avoidance of any doubt, this application does not propose to retain the existing bungalow, rather it relates to the timing of it being demolished. As it appears on the decision notice, the bungalow must be demolished prior to the occupation of the first dwelling. The applicant seeks to change it so that it relates to the second dwelling. The applicant has clarified that the application seeks the wording to relate to the completion of the second dwelling. Officers have considered the potential outcomes of changing the wording as proposed. Your officers concluded that it may be possible to occupy the second dwelling prior to its completion. It could also be possible the dwelling is never fully completed. In either eventuality, the trigger to demolish the bungalow would not be reached, creating the unintended consequence of retaining the bungalow by default. Therefore, as set out in the report, paragraph 7.8, the revised wording of the condition proposed by officers is to require the demolition of the bungalow within 1 month of the completion or the occupation of the second dwelling, whichever happens first. Changing the requirement to demolish the bungalow in connection with the second dwelling rather than the first still results in the same outcome. The bungalow will be demolished and only 2 dwellings remain on the site following the development. The change to the condition does not conflict with the reason and purpose for the condition being imposed in the first place. The application is therefore recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. We now have our public speakers. Our first of all is Councillor Jeanette Camps-Walsh of Beckley and Stonewood Parish Council. Are you there? Oh, good evening, Councillor.
Good evening. Yes, I have a slideshow. Are you able to show it? That's it. Right. Thank you very much.
Okay, you'll have 5 minutes to when you're ready.
Right. Okay. Thank you. So I'm here on behalf of Beckley and Stonewood Parish Council. As some of you have already had a site visit from a previous application on this, I'll just go through this very quickly. But Sandy Acre, which you can't see from the photographs, is in a very elevated position. It's about 125 metres up and about 10 metres above the nearest houses. So it's very, very visible. And the bungalow is overlooking and overbearing and can be seen from the conservation officer. It wouldn't have been granted planning permission now. Next slide, please. So this is just a quick photo to show you that it's very visible, and it's even more visible in winter. Next slide, please. And this shows its proximity to the conservation officer, sorry, to the conservation area, which is in pink. Next slide, please. So we've had a very long planning history. In 2019, the Parish Council were pleased to support permission that the bungalow be knocked down and replaced with a dwelling house, which was in the middle of the plot and therefore would not be overbearing. The next year, permission was given for a second dwelling. And in fact, this isn't compliant with Greenbelt policy because you're not supposed to have a larger something that's materially larger than the garage that it replaced. Next slide, please. So 22, as was mentioned, the planning officer supported, but the planning committee refused to allow retention of the existing bungalow, which would have meant 3 houses on the site. And the owner appealed, and that was dismissed. Next slide, please. So this application, the versions have been changed. So the first version, which we consulted upon, was that the trigger point, as it's called, should be based on occupation of the second house. This was then changed after the time for responding to completion of the second house, which, as the officer pointed out, and as we pointed out to him, would actually could be never. We're also concerned that part of our evidence was deleted, which was particularly a report by a member of our parish council, who is a solicitor, who had a meeting with the owner of Sandy Acre, and he was not willing to sign an undertaking to demolish the bungalow. Next slide, please. The Greenbelt policies aren't mentioned in the planning officer's report, and I just wanted to draw your attention to the last one, 154, which is the one we're talking about, D, which says you can replace the building in the Greenbelt, providing the new building is in the same use and not materially larger than the one it replaces. And this hasn't happened in this instance. Next slide, please. And another comment, Beckley and Sturwood neighbourhood plan has been examined, and the examiner's report received by SODC. As such, it carries considerable weight. And the examiner agrees with us that Sandy Acre is not within the settlement boundary, which may have some bearing on this case. Next slide, please. So our objections is that the existing bungalow must be demolished because the new house has been built, is finished, and it replaces it. It must be demolished to ensure that there's not a third building on the site. The retention of the bungalow would be an appropriate development in the green belt and cause harm to its openness, as the planning officer acknowledges. The planning officer goes on to state that there would be a greater negative effect on the openness of the green belt, but this is acceptable for a short period of time. It is not, because SODC has no control over when the second house is built or whether it's ever built. So you can't say it's for a short period of time. And as I've said before, the bungalow is overlooking and overbearing. Next slide, please. Next, thank you. And as I mentioned before, it's not in the settlement boundary.
You have 30 seconds remaining.
Last slide, please. So this application seeks to postpone and undermine the rejection that this planning committee has made to retain the bungalow. It will have a negative impact on the openness of the green belt. SODC has no control over how long the bungalow will be retained, and you need to put a clause in if you're thinking of accepting this, that it's demolished in 2 years. So please reject this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's much. So good timing. Do we have any questions for the parish councillor here? I see none, so thank you very much. Now go on to our next speaker, which is a joint one from Dom Holsworth and Sean Jeffrey, objectors, so both virtually. Are you there? You'll have 5 minutes between you, if you are.
Yeah, I'm ready to go if.
Okay, when you're ready, go.
So I'll just take 2 minutes on this. I'd like to thank the councillors for taking the time to consider this planning application, but let's be clear that it has no merit. This is a cut and dried case. As the planning officer himself notes in his report, there have been no material changes to the relevant planning regulations, and no material changes to the site. There are therefore no material reasons to change the original conditions imposed, particularly as they were upheld by the planning inspector after a recent appeal. I'd also like to alert councillors to what a mess this application has been and how extremely difficult it is to react to. The application that neighbours saw and reacted to had a different wording to the one in the application you're looking at, and a different wording again to the wording proposed by the planning officer. Neighbours in effect commented on a different application to the one before us today. We responded to the following wording: that the bungalow be demolished upon occupation of the second home. Then the wording was changed to upon completion of the second home on the final day of the consultation. As the planning officer notes, the house could be occupied and used for years, but never officially completed. This new wording would allow the applicant to delay demolition of the bungalow indefinitely. Councillors, this is in effect an application to have 3 homes on a sensitive, highly visible greenbelt site where there was previously only one. A couple of neighbours offered heavily caveated support for the application. Had these neighbours been responding to the current wording upon completion, their caveats would have been triggered and their support withdrawn. Their caveats would have been triggered and their support withdrawn. Councillors, the planning system was designed to balance the interests of developers and their neighbours. Moments of bias in the system, such as we've seen here, erode public confidence in its impartiality. I urge you to stand by the original conditions to show that the planning system operates without favour or bias, and to throw out this application.
Thanks very much. Another speaker, please.
Good evening. I would like the committee to consider the following 2 points. The Sandy Acre site has quite a planning history over recent years. The most pertinent to the current application was in October 20, when the applicant sought permission for the phased erection of 2 dwelling houses in replacement for the existing bungalow. That application made no reference as to at what point the bungalow would be demolished in the phased development. However, the condition, which is now being sought to be varied, was that the bungalow would be demolished within 3 months of first occupation of either dwelling. The reason for the condition was to ensure that the development does not result in the addition of a 3rd dwelling on the site to protect the greenbelt from inappropriate development and harm to its openness. Other than the erection of the first property, which has now been stood empty for many months, there has been no material change in site circumstance, and there has been no change in planning policy. This has been confirmed by the planning officer. The reason for the imposition of the condition still remains, and thus the condition should remain in its current format. It has been suggested that 3 properties on the site would only be temporary, but as my colleague has indicated, what does constitute completion? There is no justification for even temporary harm to the openness of the greenbelt. A further condition to the October 2020 consent was that a full drainage scheme would be submitted. This was done, but on the basis of a phased development, not for a site with 3 dwellings. Allowing the bungalow to remain until after completion of the second property will undoubtedly have an impact on surface water drainage. The properties to the north of the development have already suffered significant flooding due to surface water runoff from land adjoining the development site, and there is concern that this could occur again. If the committee is minded to vary the condition, then a further report on drainage should be submitted. I do, however, urge the committee to uphold the condition that is already in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Do you have any questions for Sean here? Or for Dom, Mr. Holsworth? No, I see none. Yeah, I've got a question for you. Is that there are 2 completed properties on the site, including the bungalow, and an uncompleted one? Is that right?
At present, there is the bungalow itself. There is a completed but unoccupied building. Well, that's the first home, and the second home. There is a big hole in the ground.
Right.
So there are 2 buildings.
Right. So there's a hole in the ground,
as in that picture.
a bungalow, and a house. And
yes,
at the moment, is the house occupied?
No, not as far as we can tell.
But it is completed?
Yes.
In your view, and the bungalow is occupied?
As far as we're aware.
Okay, but the whole of the ground is neither occupied nor complete?
The hole in the ground is just the hole in the ground.
Okay, thank you very much. I understand, that was helpful to understand where we are. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, we now turn to yes, David Burson, the agent. Oh, please, you're here. David, you'll have 5 minutes when you're ready.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And yes, I'm David Burson. I'm agent for the applicants, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Mr. Smith is here tonight, but has asked that I speak on his behalf. As explained by your officer, the application is to alter a condition attached to the existing planning permission to erect 2 dwellings on the site. The permission currently requires demolition of the bungalow within 3 months of occupation of the first dwelling. The applicants wish to vary this to allow the bungalow to be retained while the second home is constructed. It's key to note that the question in this application is limited to a change in condition, not a re-examination of all the planning merits of the scheme for 2 homes which have been found acceptable, hence your granting of permission previously. The committee are aware of the applicant's previous request to permanently retain the bungalow, which the council declined in 2022. The applicants acknowledge the council's decision and respect it, so they don't seek now to retain the building permanently. This application is just to allow the permit scheme to be implemented efficiently, demolishing the bungalow promptly at the end of works. We acknowledge the objections raised, including by the parish council. However, these are largely based on the mistaken belief that the application seeks to retain the building permanently. It does not. We also highlight that the local objections aren't unanimous. 6 of the 11 residents who responded to the application raised no objection or expressed support. For the avoidance of doubt, this application is not to retain the bungalow permanently, only to allow a stay of execution. The building is to be demolished promptly upon completion or occupations of the dwellings. The condition proposed by your officer requires demolition within 1 month of the second new home on site being completed or occupied, whichever happens first. This belt and braces approach removes ambiguity and offers certainty that the building will be demolished promptly. The applicants are well aware of its requirements and in no doubt as to the ultimate obligation to demolish the building, which is unequivocal. Approval of this application will not result in any greater impact on the greenbelt or local amenity of the development already permitted. The result of the development will be unaltered from that already allowed on the site. There will only be 2 homes at Sandy Acre, as already allowed by the council during and after the development. In brief, the proposal should not result in any greater impact on the local area, including regarding traffic and the openness of the greenbelt than that development that's already permitted. The temporary reprieve on the bungalow being retained will allow the development to be implemented efficiently and ensure best use is made of an existing building in order that disruption from development can, so far as possible, be minimised. There will be no change in the planning benefits, including still contributions to which have already been paid on the first house. The second is to be undertaken as a self-build project. In the absence of any planning harm, we believe that planning permission should be granted. We fully endorse your officer's carefully considered opinion and respectfully ask that you support it and grant this application.
Thank you very much. Do you have any questions?
How long do you expect this construction of the second house to take, and are there any kind of constraints on that? From the planning perspective, are there any constraints on that?
No particular constraints. The phased scheme that's been permitted on the site for the 2 dwellings, you've seen the photographs. The first dwelling it's been there for a while, and the pre-commencement conditions on the site are common to both buildings, so they have all been signed off and the site is ready to go. In terms of the timeline for construction, that is one which is in the applicant's hands. They're undertaking it as a self-build project. The condition that your officers have proposed, though, has been carefully thought out to avoid any situation where you are left with a completed house which is unoccupied or a house which could be argued not to be complete, but someone might take up occupation. I stress it's not the applicant's intention, but I suppose the approach of your authority has to be to assume the worst and guard against it. And it means that the owners will have to be in promptly, and then the bungalow would disappear a month after. So there wouldn't be a realistic period in which three homes could be present or occupied on site.
But there's no condition that the second house has to be built within a certain period. That was the point of my question. So, I mean, I'm particularly concerned about the phrase self-build, because I have known of cases where these have taken 10 years or more. And the bungalow does not have to be demolished until that is either completed or occupied. So that could spread out over a long period.
It could theoretically. I think it's fair to say that the applicants have asked me to make this application because they are keen to get on, having gone through an application and appeal process which lasted 14 months. The delay was largely out of their hands with the inspectorate. In terms of harm that might arise if there was a protracted construction period, there is a planning permission there for 2 dwellings on the site. The dwelling which is yet to be constructed is far larger than the bungalow. So if that permission weren't to be implemented promptly, the result of that would be you have a smaller building on the site of the bungalow, and you would still have less built form on the site than the end result that's been permitted by the council. So the danger zone, if you want to call it that, in terms of theoretical absolute maximum volume on the site is very limited. It's those 4 weeks between the building being finished and then the bungalow coming down.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions for the applicant? See none. So thank you very much. We'll go back to questions then before the officer. Sorry. Oh, sorry, board member. The board member wants to speak?
No, I'll speak in debate.
Okay. Sorry, thank you. Okay. Go back to
I know how the angers again.
Paul, we've now got questions for the officer. Paul. Any questions then? Right.
Paul, can you just read out the new wording that we're looking to approve this?
Yes. So the new wording reads that the buildings specified in the application to be demolished shall be demolished within 1 month of the completion or occupation of the second dwelling hereby permitted, whichever is soonest.
And your consideration is that that's fairly watertight, and we won't be left with 3 properties on this side.
It's difficult to see how that would occur if we are capturing both occupation and completion. There was concern about, well, what constitutes completion? Could a building be occupied if it wasn't completed? Potentially. So this captures the eventuality of both it being lived in and it not being quite complete.
Councillor,
so it may well be in there, but can you tell us what the original wording was to replace the bungalow?
The original wording on the permission that was being implemented, that the building specified in the application to be demolished shall be demolished within 3 months of the first occupation of either of the 2 dwellings hereby permitted. So that would have allowed the occupation of the first.
So could you say that again, Paul?
The building specified in the application to be demolished shall be demolished within 3 months of the first occupation of either of the 2 dwellings hereby permitted.
Right. So if that house which we saw was to be occupied now,
yes,
that would trigger the requirement for the bungalow to be demolished.
That's correct.
Even though the hole in the ground is still a hole in the ground.
Right. Yeah.
So the change, if I'm right, is saying that we can the bungalow will stay and the house will stay until such time as the hole in the ground turns into a completed or occupied house.
Correct.
That's what it sounds like. The bungalow will be staying for some time. Is that right?
Well, there will be a period of time during construction where there will be 3 buildings on the site, but at the point at which that building can be either considered completed or occupied, within 1 month, the bungalow might be demolished.
Thank you. Thank you. That's good.
Well,
That's right.
yes, it's not so much a question, is it? This doesn't sound like a very convincing scenario. I mean, clearly what's desired is to get rid of this bungalow. It sounds to me as if the safest thing is to stick with what's we've got. Rather, this doesn't seem. This is really quite slippery. You know, I mean, how do we nail down the getting rid of this bungalow? Because I'm not convinced that this is really doing it. Are you?
I think that's a debate.
Yes, the question.
If the question is how we nail it down,
yes,
the officers have put forward a recommended condition that we think can nail it down.
Yeah,
if members disagree, that's, you know,
yes, something else. Yes. I'm not convinced at all.
You're not convinced. Anybody else? Any other further questions for? So that. Can I just sort of summarise then? So the current condition is, the current situation is that if as soon as either the house or the second house, the hole in the ground house, is occupied, or then the bungalow has to come down. If either building is occupied, is that right, or complete?
On the sections. So the original condition, that the building specified in the application to be demolished shall be demolished within 3 months, first occupation of either of the 2 dwellings.
Yes.
So as soon as the first dwelling is occupied, it triggers the need for the existing bungalow to be demolished.
Right.
The applicants are seeking to change that so that it relates to the second dwelling, so that the first building that's there can be occupied without triggering that need to demolish the bungalow.
Right.
The end result is the same. The end result is that the bungalow is still demolished and that 2 dwellings will exist on the site.
But okay, am I right to say at the moment though that as soon as that house is occupied,
yes,
then the bungalow that triggers the demolition. So
just clarify one thing. In the original condition, it's within 3 months of occupation.
Yes.
And this
is tighter because it reduces it to 1 month. So it reduces.
So now it's saying
so now it is. So we've reduced it even further. So it's even tighter than it was.
Move on. So do you wish to say? Okay. Motion.
Yeah, I'd like to propose motion.
Okay.
That we support this recommendation.
Wish to speak to it? Anyone seconder for that?
No, not.
Second. Okay. Do you wish to speak?
Not yet.
Okay. Debate then.
So there's no votes in planning. If anyone who's on the committee before will remember that we took a very hard line stance to this application. The applicant, Mr. Smith, that sat over there, who I met last night at the Beckford Parish Council very briefly, but I haven't met previous to that. I wasn't able to attend the site visit. Came and said, well, look, in retrospect, I would like to keep the bungalow. And we said, well, look, the original planning application was for 2 houses on this property. It feels sneaky. You know, that's what was signed off, and that's what the village is expecting. So we took a fairly hard line, and we said that bungalow has to go. And that's, I should imagine I'm not in Mr. Smith's Christmas card list as a result. However, I think we have to be as reasonable as we possibly can and take a step back from this. It's a very large site. It's, despite it sitting up on a hill, it's shielded from trees and it is not that visible. Both houses sit well back from the road. And, you know, we have to, as a planning authority, be generally predisposed in favour of building. And we have to demonstrate some compassion and flexibility in that, and realising that when you are building a house, especially self-builds, and you'll probably relate to this as a builder yourself, that, you know, it can be difficult and complex. And what we are going to end up here with is 2 properties on this site. Our officers have been very careful to draw up a form of wording that's going to make sure that's happening. There will be a slightly extended period where there's a construction site there. But, you know, I think in the round, showing that flexibility and compassion to make sure that we have the buildings eventually completed, rather than what could end up having is the second building not built, or half built, and then, you know, having to abandon it. I think, you know, we've already stood incredibly firm, and a little bit of flexibility at this stage over what is small wording, for me, shows that we are genuinely in favour of you know, what we say we are, which is building houses.
Thank you much. Well, that's Are there any other wishes to make us contribute to the debate?
Two seconds.
I have.
Do you want to speak?
Yep.
Okay. Well, you can answer that question. Yeah, I'm against it. I thought you were actually going to put forward a refusal, but that quite surprised me. I think we've already bent over backwards to give planning permission here for 2 properties, because the local council, I think, were against it in the first place. So we have given permission for 2 properties there. What I don't understand, I can't make 2 and 2 make 4 here. Like, if I was a builder, which I used to be, you know, I'd want to develop these 2 properties, get them on the market and sell them very quickly. You know, the bungalows just, you know, nothing to do with this. I just want to get my money from these 2 properties I'm going to build, unless I'm going to live in one and maybe just sell the other. I don't see the need for changing this. I don't see the need for waiting, you know, 14 months for an appeal to come through, which was mentioned there. There's something just really doesn't make sense. We've made a decision. Once the first house is complete, someone's moved in, the bungalows are knocked down within 3 months. I don't see a problem with that. I really don't see why we're even debating the issue of a new proposal. It really makes no sense to me whatsoever. And I think the feel I'm getting around the table is we're thinking, yeah, okay, but what if it doesn't happen? And that's the feeling I'm getting.
But I think our officers explained that it's very unlikely that it cannot happen in any other way other than to.
I disagree with that.
You've spoken. So, anyone else wish to contribute to the debate? Councillor Sadler?
So I don't know yet.
Okay. Fair enough. Anyone else wish to contribute?
No, I fully endorse what Councillor Holmes just said, actually. I think that's not much over.
Okay.
At all.
Anyone else wish to make a statement? And in which case we shall, if not, we shall. Councillor, sum up.
Yes, I mean, I just think we should just look at the risks and not speculate on the motivation of the applicant. The applicant has a right to make this applicant and, you know, this application. So let's just speculate. You know, the parish council talked about, or one of the objectives, I'm sorry, talked about the drainage issue, and I've just confirmed with the officer that it's just a 1 month overlap when you'll have 3 maximum, when you'll have 3 buildings there. So I don't think that's a risk to worry about on the drainage. I'm convinced that the officers put a very tight condition in as before occupation, as well as completion. I think that would obviously be a really sensible change, because it could never be completed. So, you know, let's go with that. And yeah, I just think we shouldn't speculate. We should just look at it for what it is. And it's as tight as ever. In fact, it's tighter than the last one because it's within 1 month.
Okay. Okay, so we'll go to a vote. All those in favour of you want to sum up? So yes, we'll just, do you want to sum up?
I think so, yeah. Councillor Casey has said it very well. I mean, I think, you know, we've already been very firm on this. We've got two houses, so we're in danger of redeciding planning applications. There is already standard planning application for 2 houses, right? That's there. We've said you can't keep the bungalow. And there's now wording to say that the bungalow will be demolished. So, you know, but as Frank said, I don't think we can speculate on the reasons why the applicant wants to do that. For whatever reason, as a self-build individual, he wants to change the wording on that. We reach the same outcome within a very short space of time. So,
thank you much. That's right. Okay, we'll go to a vote then. All those in favour of the motion to approve the change the condition of this application, whereby the bungalow can be retained until such time as second dwelling is either occupied or completed. All those in favour of this motion? All those against? Sorry.
That's 3 against 3, Chair.
I'm very unfortunate. It should not work. I will vote in favour of the motion.
Scary then, Chair.
So the okay, yeah. Councillor Hayes leaving the meeting. We move on to our next item, which is anyone National Westminster Bank reinstatement of residential entrance door and construction of 6 flats. And Mark,
Chairman, are we, what is core age for this committee?
3.
3? Okay.
Usually swung the balance of power now.
So,
Henley on Thames. Were you speaking in the local member slot, Ken?
Absolutely.
Not worth the papers written on.
Councillor, I'll have the presentation then from Mark.
Yes. Sorry, please could Mr. Buckley turn off his camera? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks planning permission to convert and extend the building to enable the provision of 6 bedrooms with associated roof terrace, roof tiles and roof lights. Access to the proposed flats would be via the existing vestibule entrance at the front of the property and via a central staircase, which would be housed within the proposed extension to the building. Principal concerns have been raised by locals and the Town Council relate to the impacts on neighbours, the lack of refuse and cycle storage, lack of parking, poor amenity for future occupants, and the fact that the development is perceived to be an overdevelopment and uncharacteristic form of development. Within the report before you, officers have assessed these matters in detail and consider the proposed development to be acceptable in principle and would not result in any detrimental impact on the character and appearance of the area or the amenity of neighbours in neighbouring properties. The council's own waste management team are satisfied with the proposed waste strategy outlined within the design and access statement, and the local highway authority do not object to the proposed development. In both respects, it would not be reasonable to justify refusal of this application on either waste or parking grounds. Your officers are satisfied that the proposed development can be supported and that planning permission should be granted subject to conditions which are outlined within section 10 of the report for you, outlined in full within Appendix C. Thank you.
That's it.
Could I just ask to go back to the very first slide that shows the location? And hold it there so I can.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, there you go. There's the town hall there, if you can see that. The little island. It's owned by this one.
Thank you.
Okay. Can I go to Bob Buckley from representing Henley Thames Town Council?
Good afternoon. Good evening.
David, you'll have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. I'll be brief here. I will declare that a number of years ago, I was a resident in flat 1 Signet House, which you will see to the very right of that picture. So I know the property very, very well. I know the overlook. I know the issues we have around there. The first thing I'll point out is that there is a plan to put 2 flats in the courtyard at the back. There is no room for cycle storage. There is no room for waste holding. The residents there are expected to keep the waste in their flat for up to 2 weeks, and potentially, especially over regatta, that waste is not collected for 3-4 weeks at a time. You will have 6 flats in that location. The only entrance is through the front door. You will have waste for 6 flats being collected outside every week. You will have 6 bins full of food. You will have between 6 to 12 bags of disposable waste, 6 to 12 bags of recycling. There is very little space there, especially if the vestibule is still being used as an entrance to a shop. So everything will just pile up outside the front of those windows. The second thing I will call out is if you look at those windows, there is very little light that gets through. You look at the windows next door. The windows next door are quite large. The first floor flat that we had in were 4 windows of that size at the front. That section shows you the back. What it doesn't show you properly is the bedroom for flat 1, which if you go to the next slide, you will see the bedroom for flat 1, that one. That is that white bit at the bottom is a bedroom. The white bit, the white window you can see there is the bathroom for flat 2. That is occluded glass. The bedrooms are not occluded glass. So any use of a window in flat 3 of this property will have broad sight into the bedrooms for flat 4 and flat 2. The use of roof lighting in the back patio leaves very little light in the property. They are 1-bedroom flats that are planning. There is very little kitchen space. I am genuinely surprised to see that when we turned down the application for 3 flats, they have now come back with 6 flats, and the planning officer seems to be inclined to think that this is not overdevelopment. So my concerns are waste collection, the holding of waste in the properties, the tiny size of the kitchens, and therefore issues on ventilation and condensation, and overlooking significantly into the privacy of flat 1. I think that's about it.
Thank you very much, Ms. Buckley. Have we got any questions for Ms. Buckley? I don't see any. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I shall now go to Henley Town Council meeting. Thank you. Cheers.
Okay.
Bye.
And I think we now have Ryan Woods, the agent for the applicant. Thank you very much. You'll have 5 minutes to when you're ready.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Chair and Councillors. I'm Ryan Woods from Purple Architects, and I'm the agent for the application. Out of 6 formal consultees, Henley Town Council is the only one to have rejected the proposal. So this objection is required for the application to come to committee. So I'm going to go through their objection points one by one. Henley Town Council says scheme would result in overdevelopment. The scheme reuses an existing, currently redundant building. The existing floor area is 414 square metres. The proposed new building adds, once demolition is taken into account, only 17.5 square metres, an increase of 4%. An increase of 4% is not overdevelopment. Henley Town Council says that the development would be out of keeping with the character and appearance of the area. We disagree. We say that the only elevation which alters in any way has been very carefully, which is the rear elevation. The front elevation remains exactly as it is. The rear elevation has been carefully designed to unpick the unattractive and unsympathetic 1960s and 70s accretions, including flat roofed extensions, an unsightly steel fire escape stair and metal barred windows. I don't know if we can you show the photograph of the rear elevation. Yeah. And instead incorporates a modest extension which very carefully incorporates materials, forms and construction details found in the original arts and crafts building. The end result is a positive impact and enhancement of the conservation area. The Town Council says there is concern over the lack of assessment in the right to light and the impact on neighbouring flats, as raised by Henley Town Council just now. On the contrary, you can see the red dotted line on there, which was our starting point for the design of this rear elevation. Below that red dotted line, the extension has no impact, no material impact on the light to the flat that isn't already lost from its own boundary wall. Following the comment from the neighbours management company, we carried out a further daylight assessment, which concluded that the proposed extension did not have any material impact on the existing daylight received in habitable rooms of the neighbouring flats, a conclusion which SADC officers agreed with. Any Town Council is concerned that it's a low quality accommodation and excessive use of roof lights would conflict with the design guide. The accommodation and flats are compliant with the nationally described space standards. So that isn't the case, and the kitchens obviously comply with that. Nor does the scheme incorporate an excessive number of roof lights when the height and volume of the attic spaces is taken into account. Further, all of the roof lights are on the rear elevation, which can only be seen as restricted views. The roof light layout is designed to provide both views and light without cutting through the existing purlins of the roof of this important arts and crafts building. The refuse and waste collection, SADC's own waste management officer has no objection to the scheme. And in relation to cycle storage, SADC says that it's not necessary to include cycle storage in such a central and sustainable location. Henley Town Council says the scheme has a lack of amenity space. 5 out of the 6 new flats have a small area of their own designated, not shared external space. However, the site is located very close to a large number of public amenity spaces. It's less than 700 metres of mill meadows, within 1,000 metres of marsh meadows, and under 350 metres of Thameside and Singers Park. It's within 450 metres of the towpath on the Berkshire side of the Thames, and from there, easy access to a network of rural footpaths. Within 500 metres is Makin's recreation ground, and in the other direction, it's within 560 metres of Freeman's Meadow. The start of the footpath to the Mount is within 750 metres, and the start of the path to from Phyllis Court along the Thames is within 650 metres. So the site has really good, easy walking access to a huge variety of high-quality public amenity spaces. There were two further issues: noise impact, which is subject to a condition which we're happy to accept, and parking, which in this central Henley location there is no requirement to provide off-street parking. In this application, the existing redundant space in this building, which is unsuitable for commercial uses, will be converted to wholly beneficial residential use. This will help bring vitality back to the centre of Henley, at the heart of Henley's conservation area, directly helping to sustain its businesses, bars and cafes.
Thank you very much. Have we got any questions for the applicant here? Councillor Bearder.
Where do you plan to put the waste?
The waste will be held within the flats until the day of collection, and only then is it put out on the pavement. It would be put out on the pavement, yes.
Is that standard practice for other shops and things?
Yes, it is. It is, and it's an accepted. There are precedents in Henley for flats of this nature where that has been accepted in recent applications.
Well, it's not so much a question as partly a question. I think it's come up before that there has to be a question mark. Let's put it that way. Whether that's really an acceptable way of designing new accommodation, that you live with your waste in these small, and it's not a very generous space. So is it really acceptable? I mean, I know in other areas where this has happened, it does does lead to trouble. But anyway,
Will you frame that as a question?
I did frame it as a question. Do you think it's really acceptable
Okay,
to,
I think that
to do that? Yeah, I think it is a question we should ask, actually. You know, is it really acceptable to have these designs? And I say I've seen it happen elsewhere, where we cram in as many units as we can, leaving people with mechanical ventilation, living with wasted confined spaces for some time. I don't know that we should.
Good points, but that's for debate,
Yes,
not for.
quite. I'm like, yeah.
Okay. Any further questions for the applicant? Okay, Councillor Sadler. Oh,
Sorry. So there are 6. I just want to confirm that there are 6 units, and each of the units has a living space with a kitchenette within that living space. That's right, isn't it?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So that means they have to hold the waste in effectively their living area, don't they?
They're open plan spaces, yes, but I don't see that that's any different to a space that has a door on which can be left open and people pass through. If there are any smells, they're going to pass through the whole building anyway. I'm not quite sure. The waste that would cause the greatest nuisance would be food waste, which is collected on a weekly basis. Recycling and non-recycling rubbish really is not a nuisance waste product. Not in my house anyway.
okay. Councillor Bearder.
Do you have an obligation? I'm not genuinely not sure about what the situation is about affordable housing or SIL contributions. Is that relevant here?
Obviously, there's very little additional floor space, so the SIL contribution will be not very much because it's an existing building. And so, what was
affordable?
There is no need for affordable housing in a development of less than 10 new units.
Sorry, yeah. Sorry, not really familiar with it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a question for the officer. Any other questions for the applicant here? No, Councillor Arnold, nothing? No. Okay. Thank you very much then.
Thank you.
And does the ward councillor wish to speak? Okay. In that case, we'll go for a motion. So questions for Mark, sorry.
Can we just see the elevations on the rear? Is that existing?
That's the existing up there.
Yeah, and then what is being proposed?
Sharon, if you just mind going, I'm not controlling the presentation, sorry. There we go, that one.
So
it's going up, that central bit at the back is going up.
Oh, sorry.
That's existing.
That's existing, and
then it's going up that middle bit.
That's going what?
It's going up. So that's obviously first floor at the moment. It's got pitch. That's going up.
Increasing the gable.
Right.
So it
That
goes
bit going
higher.
higher.
I see.
And that's going to have the central staircase contained within it.
I see. Okay. I'm just looking at Google Maps and
Yeah, the window on the elevation, the gable, sorry, will be the staircase.
Fine.
Okay. That's the satellite.
So Catherine alluded to it a little bit, because the design of these apartments, it does look like there's a lot of reliance on roof lights and things like that. So is there going to be any kind of additional requirement for ventilation, mechanical ventilation, or whatever it might be to deal with these kind of quite confined spaces?
There's a condition for ventilation, which we're happy to have it on. As for any further external alterations, I don't think there'll be any required other than for ventilation, which our officers consider is acceptable.
This isn't a listed building or anything, is it?
It's a building of local note. It's identified in the neighbourhood plan as a building of local note. But it doesn't have the same sort of statutory protection as a listing.
And in Henley, is there a need for these kind of very small units?
It's a good question. There's always need for sort of smaller accommodations. If it's based on Ashmile, which is very old, it's usually for larger properties, but the strategy is kind of slightly different when it comes to town centres, because we're trying to utilise existing stock of buildings. So I can't answer that with a definite answer, but yes, there would be smaller units which I assume will be.
So our policy is silent on whether or not we favour
on specific sizes. I think yes, in town centre locations for kind of proposals for conversions. Yeah.
And how,
Yes.
Sorry.
Go on.
have the full implications of the small confined residences of this sort been thought about in terms of climate change, in terms of temperatures rising, the amount of extra energy that you need to make any sort of air extraction system work?
Well, these applications will require regulations, building regulations to be met. So that will all be mostly dealt with during the building regulations process. Ventilation obviously will help to assist with sort of movement of air, etc. But yeah, building regs would have to cover that.
Councillor Sadley for the question.
Yeah, sorry. Apologies if it's written. I do apologise, but I just want to clarify because the parish councillor mentioned that 3 were refused before. Is that right? And then
they weren't refused before. They were recommended for refusal by the town council last time.
Yes,
as part of the previous application. But amendments were submitted as part of the application, and therefore they moved their objection Henley last time. So it did eventually get determined under delegated powers. And now, obviously, this time around, there's more units.
So it did get refused under delegated power, and it did get approved. What? Can you explain how that happened? Sorry.
So the original the previous application, let me just check, was in 2022. It was an application, no, 2023, apologies, for 3 new flats, including all the conversions, etc. We consulted on that initially, and on Thames objected to
members
consultation. Any on Thames, the town council objected, but through amendments, etc. Their objection fell away.
They would do that.
It didn't trigger the need to come to the planning committee or anything. And then therefore it could be done under delegated powers. And it's approved.
And then they decided actually we want a few more flats.
Then obviously you've got this application that came in for 6, yes.
And
now we're in a situation.
And the town council put.
Yes, please.
Okay, any further questions for our officer? I see. Sorry. Yes, I see none. So we'll have a motion and we'll like to propose a motion. That's all right.
I'm going to propose a motion for a site visit. Mainly because there's so many questions flying around here. And I've got 3 specifics which I need to look at. Are car parking. And I can go through.
Okay.
If the site visit doesn't go through, I'll obviously go through in detail on the car parking. There's nothing for cycling there. The other.
Sorry.
Yeah, the other applications in the town for flats have been made to have cycle racks somewhere in the building. There's nothing obviously here, and obviously the other one is the rubbish, and I'm surprised actually on the waste issue, because there's a major problem not just in the town, outside the town, wherever there's flats, people do not keep their rubbish in the flat. They put it in the rubbish bins that are out in the marketplace or in a Bell Street, wherever, and that's a major problem. And I'm surprised actually, the waste department haven't made mention of that. So they're 3 items I'd like to discuss on my side. And also I'd like to look at the overlooking matter, which the town council made as well. I think we should have a look at that as well.
Okay, that's a good motion proposed.
Finally, as we're going to go to Rockfield Grays, this is only just down the road, so
Okay, so let's second that proposal for site visit. Okay, all those. Do you wish to say anything now, or should we just go to a vote?
I'd just go to a vote. I think it's a sensible proposition in this room.
Absolutely.
Do we get to debate it then?
So what?
Do we get to debate it, or I get to say?
Well, we've got a motion, well, to debate, there's a motion, we've got a motion on the table for a site visit. And that's the one you want to debate, is it? Okay.
So I'll say, I mean, I just think that we've had a site visit this evening. That I might have missed one or two, but then I counted 6 people who left at the beginning of the meeting. And I think it's sort of obscene that we bring that many people from wherever they came from all the way to Abingdon, and then at the off tell them they will go home again. That's bad enough, but to get to this stage, right, where we are just about to debate the motion, and then call a site visit, means that we've not only got to do the site visit, but we're going to have to do this whole process all over again at a future planning committee.
Yeah, sorry.
Just to say, obviously, that is a process that is permitted in the committee, and
I realise it's permitted, but we're debating whether that ought to be, you know, whilst there may be some exceptional circumstances why that is a valid and appropriate. I think in this case, I can't.
Okay, thank you for your contribution, Councillor Bearder.
A point of order, please. We were told a few months ago, I'm sure Darius would agree, that we were told not to put site visits forward at the start of a meeting. We were told to listen to all the speakers and see what's going on, and then put our site visit forward. And that's what I've waited for this evening. And now that I'm not sure where that came from, Darius. You might be able to tell us, but this is what we were told to do, and that's what I've done this evening.
Where did it come from? I think that was the peer review of planning that came through with the recommendation that we should hear, obviously, all the speakers and the officers' report before we then determine, okay, do we need to go to a site visit? That wasn't made for the first application, I believe, because there was a general consensus. But on this, obviously, there seems to be more debate, yes. So that's why it's.
So we're debating the motion about having a site visit for this application. Councillor Sadler, you wish to say something?
No, yeah, it's not that process. I've got no argument about that particularly. It's just given the amount of items that we've drawn out of this, do you not feel it's appropriate just to refuse it, or do you think it's still got some legs?
Well, I'll sum up in a minute.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Keys-Railly.
May I just say, I don't think other people's inconvenience in turning up here is necessarily a good reason not to ask for a site visit. If we're not sure about something and we wish to make a good determination, I think it's perfectly reasonable. It's obviously unfortunate for them, but it's in their better interest ultimately. So I don't really see the validity of that. The second question is for Darius. You mentioned this peer review. Have we actually seen this?
Yes, this was, I believe, before the May 2023 election. So
right, it's
before
in there.
you were on the committee, but the results of that were shared, and I can also click them again. But ultimately, it was to make sure that the committee heard all the arguments before saying, okay, is there material reasons to call a site visit?
Yeah, well, and again, I mean, we did this application. The prior one was approved on the 24th of November last year. I wasn't actually here on that occasion, so it's the first time I've heard this. And then we come back here, and they doubled the size of it. Yeah, I definitely have questions. I think a site visit.
I think the previous decision was a delegated one by the officers.
Was it? Right. Okay. But even so, you know, the fact that, yeah.
Okay, we've
lots of questions.
To this application on this merits. Okay, so we've had a motion to propose a site visit, which has been seconded. We've had a bit of a debate, and we'll go to a vote then. All those in favour? Oh, sorry. Kathy wishes to say.
I'd just like to say something about the merits of the site visit here and the reasons that Ken Arnott made. I think, you know, the application, the report was clear that there is no car parking and there is no cycle parking, and the arrangements for the waste. As officers, we're not sure what benefit a site visit would, you know, bring further information to members in. So I think the report is clear on those issues that have been raised.
Yes.
I mean, let me just sum up there. You know, I did also mention what the town council mentioned about the overlooking from the rear. You know, Pit 3 may have been acceptable, which it obviously was. And you know, they're suggesting that 6 aren't. 6 is probably 3 too many. So I'm bringing that in as well. But saying that again, if it goes to debate, I want to take up the issue on the car parking, on the waste, and on the cycle racks, which, you know, there are other
Well, so let's address,
applications have come
let's
forward
address that.
around the area that we've gone for the cycle racks. We've gone for waste. The one off Duke Street, we made them put the waste out in the rear in Tons Lane. So, you know, if you don't go for the site, it's entirely up to you. You know, but there are issues here which, you know, maybe the officers don't believe they are issues, but I think they will become issues as the debate goes forward.
Yeah, I'd just like to clarify, I'm not saying they're not issues.
Yeah.
I think I don't know what benefit a site visit would have in bringing out those issues further, that's all.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. I agree with you. So we go to a vote now. Who's in favour of the motion to have a site visit on this application? All those in favour of the site visit, please raise. 3. All those against? 3. I'll have a casting vote. I will cast it against. Right. Okay, so we now return to our we now go to the general, return to the general debate. We've had, we need another motion in favour. We've had everybody else. The motion in, so someone like to propose a motion either to approve or refuse this application.
I personally like to refuse it
Okay.
on grounds of overdevelopment and just not paying proper attention to housing amenity. Thank you.
Okay.
Can we put a motion in favour at the same time, or?
No, we've got a motion on the table. We have to consider that one. They need a seconder. That's all. So, now, do you wish to? You made your point. Do you wish to speak now, Ken, or?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's put the motion forward. Yeah. There are major issues on this, and you know, there comes a time when we have to stop giving permission for all these flats that are being given permission all over Henley. Now, it mentions, we've talked about neighbourhood plans before, and you know, different opinions for them. Now, the town council and Hertfordshire Parish Council specifically put an item, policy T6, parking and standards. A was development proposal should provide vehicle and car park and cycle parking to meet the most up-to-date Oxfordshire County Council standards. So I'm sure you know what they are, Councillor Bearder. Parking provisions and layout should be carefully considered as part of the wider scheme and designed as appropriate for the site. Vehicle and cycle parking should be integrated in layouts as a key element of design and ensure high quality, safe, secure and attractive environments. In particular, development proposals should comply with the requirements of the Oxford District Council Design Guide. I'm sure Mark can tell us about the design guide. OCC have parking standards. You know, there are no standards for this development here. But let's just go a bit farther here, which I did touch on when I put the proposal for a site build, which I'm surprised it didn't get all support. But there we go. It is what it is. If you look at Duke Street, Bell Street, and now Marketplace, opposite the if we put the plan on the board, where it shows the bank, which is number 18, if you look opposite that, number 19 and 21, all that area has been changed on the first and the second floor to 1-bedroom flats and also flats in the rear, and they've got car parking there. If you look at Tons Lane, I think it was the Brook House development there at Tons Lane, they have car parking where it says Tons Lane on the left hand there, they have car parking. Then you look at some of these other ones that have been given planning permission for. It says that they can use the car park. You know, the car park, the Kings Road car park, the Grays Road car park are 3-hour maximum. So where are you going to park your car? They talk about residence car park spaces. There's 350 odd residence car park spaces. There's 550 people have signed up for those. If this goes through, we're looking at another 6. People are going to have cars, you know, that live in flats. So we have a problem with car parking. So it should be refused on lack of car parking with Oxfordshire County Council parking standards. Not my standards, Oxfordshire County Council parking standards. So it should be refused on that. The waste is a major issue. It's unfortunate nobody from the waste department is here this evening. And I've called them out before. You know, the number of people in these flats that are using the council bins outside to put their rubbish in. They just ram it in there, and then it's full up with no time. They probably get rubbish all over the marketplace, you know, down these other roads, because it's used by people in the flats. Cycling, you know, why do we have to have cycling on some of the flats and not on the other flats? Well, they're going to have no cycle racks, or we're going to have all cycle racks. So we don't on this one. Oh no, we won't bother with cycle racks on this one. You know, you're into this obviously, Tim, in a big way on cycle racks. Why aren't they proposed here? Because there's no room for it. Now, maybe if it was 3 flats or 4 flats, they might find some room for cycle racks. Well, let's go back to Henley Town Council. You know, the what was shown on the screen here about the overlook into the flats net door. We're not going to know what they look like unless we would have had a site visit. But now we're going to make a decision blind because we're not going to see that. So there's 4 items there directly that we should be refusing this application on. I'll rest my case.
Thank you, Councillor Arnold. That was your seconding the motion, weren't you there? Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we're going to go to the debate now. Councillor Beardsley, you wish to speak?
Well, as well happens, I do know the parking stands for Oxfordshire County Council because I help write them. Car-free developments mean that no parking spaces are provided within the site other than those reserved for disabled people or car clubs or operational uses. The concept of car-free developments is fully supported by Oxfordshire County Council, where any such development satisfies following criteria, and then it lists a load of criteria which this development would meet. So, you know,
we have one person speaking.
So, I think we as at Oxfordshire County Council have very ambitious targets to reduce the cars in Oxfordshire, car trips in Oxfordshire by 25% by 2030. And we have to move away when we're approving developments from wedded to car ownership. You know, if people, these are going to be first homes or you know, or homes for potentially less well-off people, but it's in a very amenable space right in the centre of town where people can get to you know, public transport, etc. And this is an ideal opportunity for to deliver homes where you're not wedded to having a car. So, you know, in that on that point, I support this not having car space. I think that's a good thing. You know, I'm concerned that there is no cycle parking. However, you know, when we're retrofitting very old buildings, if there were 6 or 4 flats here, I don't see how you would put a bike rack in, short of demolishing one of the ground floor flats and putting cycle storage there, which, you know, is just not going to be economically feasible in this circumstance. There will be cycle parking in town, presumably. So, you know, the waste does seem to be a bit of an issue, but again, as the developer pointed out, and this is the case in my own home, the food waste is delivered on, or is picked up on a weekly basis, and there's no smell from the others. I have a sort of 3 set of bins, so it's feasible, and I think we have to think about future generations, the chronic need for housing, and the very sustainable location of this development. And so, in the round, I'd be in favour.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak? Councillor Norman.
Only to reinforce the extremely well put points, better than I could have put them by Councillor Bearder. I think people who buy these, presumably these are for sale, will be the kind of people who wish to live without a car, who are happy to have their bicycle stored somewhere else, if possible, and who will live within the limits of these units. I can't see that we have to prescribe how they should live. It seems to me that these will be suitable to some kinds of buyers.
Thank you very much. Okay, Councillor Sadler.
I'd say just on that one point about parking, I do agree that we should try and prevent cars going into town centres. That is a good thing to do. I just think it's slightly high-handed for people who are not going to live in those places anyway telling them that they can't have cars, and that is a real problem. I'm completely behind what Ken said. You know, you've got parking in town centres, but the residents will only go to park within certain hours, and then presumably they'll have to go and drive somewhere else outside and go and catch a bus. And I think we've had this debate before, haven't we, about Duke Street? The waste is, you know, is ridiculous. They're talking about very small units. Yeah, it just on all levels, it doesn't work. It looks like overdevelopment to me.
Thank you, Councillor Sadler. Well, I would just, I believe that Henley has the benefit of a car club, does it not? Where those people who don't have cars are able to take advantage of cars for when they're needed. And in terms of the, just going back to your point about the waste management, so these flats are acceptable in accordance with nationally described space standards, except for one. So presumably, those nationally described space standards include bed space, kitchen space, and waste space. So, you know, so that they are, you know, we can blame the government if you like, that these flats are going to be too small. So let's just, you know, be realistic about not everybody generates huge amounts of waste, and these places aren't necessarily going to be occupied 7 days a week by families.
Well, it's slightly wrong characterisation that we wouldn't do this. I lived in a studio flat in Islington, I was living with my fridge. It was quite noisy, but you know, I managed very adequately, and it was a lovely place to live, and I had a great time. You know, because it's right in the centre of Islington, I could go anywhere I wanted. So these can be rather joyous spaces to occupy.
Okay, thank you very much.
Can I speak twice as well, Chair?
Yeah,
no,
I'd like to.
Yeah, apologies. Okay, if brief, Ken, please don't rehearse everything you've said already.
I'll accept your no.
Thank you very much. That's very generous of you. Take note of that, Councillor Bearder. You're in your last chance there. Councillor.
I'd actually like to see us be a bit more proactive in bringing empty properties back into use, rather than approving overdevelopment like this, frankly, in conditions which I just personally balk at. And Henley's not the only place that suffers from this. It's happened in Wallingford, it's happened in Table.
Are you summing up here?
Essentially, yes. I really don't feel that this is the sort of thing you should be approving, because it's really not optimal housing, and it is overdeveloped. An application has been approved for 3, and it should have stayed there. That's how I feel that you know, this should have gone. That would have provided 3 additional residences. This is going over the top, and you're going to get substandard dwellings.
So you proposed a motion to refuse. Have you?
Yes.
Can you give the planning reasons for this refusal?
Overdevelopment.
Overdevelopment.
And there are. It would have been nice to have been reassured on the point, but it's quite possible, you know, that it may well involve neighbour amenity as well at the back, but it's a bit difficult to tell.
I'm sorry, we don't think that's.
Yeah, I just wanted to raise the word overdevelopment is so very overused and quite vague in planning terms. If you want to use the word overdevelopment, you need to give me a reason as to why it is physically overdevelopment. Do you think the flats are too small? Because we don't, because they meet nationally described space standards. If you can't actually argue that, then it's very difficult to defend at an appeal. So to say it's an overdevelopment, we would need to know why.
I think just to add to that, you know, we've talked about the car parking standards, and that there is no requirement for car parking in this site and on this development. There are standards for cycle parking, and this application doesn't provide cycle parking. It's clear when you look at the plans that it would be very difficult to provide cycle parking. And in terms of waste storage and provision, there is no objection from our waste facilities team And turning back to the point about the space standards the flats meet them. So
you said in one case it doesn't.
Yeah.
In one case it doesn't, but if it's a single person living in it, it does. So it's just hard to tell because we don't know based on the plans how many people are going to live in each flat. So we're taking it on the basis that it's a single person living in each flat.
I think that is just to clarify the sort of background to what the reason for refusal would be in terms of those issues.
We had an indication that the changes at the back could be overlooking.
I mean, we're not.
Well, yes, but as I say, it's a bit difficult. From the one of the images you would have shown, it would look like it was very clearly overlooking, but it don't.
I mean, it's not a question to
me.
You're proposing the refusal on the basis of its overlooking.
That is one of the things that's a bit disturbing about the proposal, as far as I'm concerned.
That may disturb you, but it's not a reason for refusal, is it?
Not the one that you raised, you motioned initially.
No.
So I'm not sure.
So I think we have a motion. Sorry,
obviously, the motion's kind of been discussed, but if you would obviously like to propose the motion on the grounds, I think of, you know, overlooking or harming neighbourhood immunity, that would be a separate motion. I think that we can then discuss properly.
Well, okay, so withdraw your motion.
Point of order, just for you, Chairman. You know, when you sum up, you can only sum up on what's taken place in the debate.
Yes.
I mentioned the overlooking when I spoke as the seconder. So that's what the proposer has brought in. It's what I've mentioned previously. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right. So the motion is.
It might. I mean, I don't know if it's going to assess, but I can show the previously approved scheme against the now proposed, because it actually doesn't really show much of a difference.
Well, Chairman, if you're going to allow that, we're going to start the debate again.
No, I think we just need clarity on what the reason for refusal would be.
Yeah, we need the.
Yeah, that the development is unacceptable because of overlooking.
Yeah, I think
and
the
loss of
argument
privacy.
was harming neighbouring immunity through the overlooking.
Yes,
So that it? Have we got that?
And
is that the only?
Is there
that
more that you want to add to that reason for refusal?
Well, it would have to be in the case of the one where it doesn't actually meet standards. I mean, I don't know.
So can you phrase the motion so that we can everybody can understand what it is?
Well, what it's being suggested is that essentially it's going to have to be on the case of overlooking. I mean, I am not going to vote for this proposal, whatever happens, because I'm afraid I've already said I can't find it acceptable to actually produce things of the sort. But I am prepared if you think that is the better course to withdraw the motion.
No, I don't think we need to withdraw the motion. I think we need to just clarify the reason and vote on it.
Okay.
I mean, we obviously have to make it overlooking.
So that the reason for refusal in your motion is overlooking.
Overlooking, yeah.
Okay, and that's it.
Privacy and harm to residential amenity.
Yes.
Okay.
And is there any other issues that have been debated that you want to add to that reason for refusal?
I think the issue about car parking has been sorted out, but it does seem very strange that we do not, in that circumstance. Another problem with the amenity is we have not made provision for storage of bicycles, as has been pointed out. That has been insisted upon elsewhere in similar developments.
And lack of cycle parking.
Yeah.
Okay.
And of course, the big one is the waste. Yes. But again, you'll be telling me that because the waste hadn't.
Yeah, my advice was that I don't think we can defend the waste issue or the car parking issue. I'm not sure we can defend the other ones, but they are issues that have been debated and.
So we're going to just look at the motion on overlooking and.
Yeah, overlooking loss of privacy and harm to residential amenity of neighbouring properties.
Yes.
And the lack of cycle parking.
Lack of cycle parking. Okay, are you happy with that?
Yes.
Okay. And you first seconded that motion, Ken, I think?
I've already spoken.
You have spoken? Okay, okay, you were summing up and we'll go to a vote now on this motions to refuse this application. All those in favour of the motions to refuse, please show. All those against? And I will cast my casting vote to against that motion. So we now look for a new motion to approve the application. Councillor Beard, do you wish to speak?
Well, I think it's been well debated. I wish to approve the application. That's in line with.
And do we have a seconder? Councillor Norman, wish to speak now? Reserve. Reserve. Okay. Do we have a debate? Councillor Arthur, briefly,
Yeah,
please.
I just think it's really sad, some of the decisions we're making here when we have neighbourhood plans which we are totally disregarding, absolutely totally disregarding, and that showed up on the Brighton one this evening, wherever you pronounce it. And I think that's pretty sad with the amount of years that go into this. And as I say, all these policies are SODC policies. They're not Hindley Town Council, they're not Harpston Parish Council. They're all in line with SODC policies, and we're totally ignoring them. Which I think. Thank
you very much, Councillor. I think you've made that point very clearly. Number of occasions.
We're starting a new debate.
Well,
we're starting a new debate on the motion, and nothing's been brought up on this. I'm just bringing it up now. I have mentioned it in another debate on another issue. Yeah,
go on then.
Not finished.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? I think you've already spoken, haven't you? No.
Didn't I propose anything?
Yes, go on.
Shall I sum up?
Yeah, sum up.
Okay.
But does the seconder want to speak then?
I don't know.
No,
Second
no.
No, thank you. Sorry. Well, we won't go into that debate again. So I won't say.
Okay. So all those in favour of the motion to approve this application, please raise. Three. And I have a casting vote.
Can we hold the objections as well?
Objectors? Three. Gosh.
And then
I have a casting vote.
Thank you, Joe.
In favour of the motion. Thank you all very much. Right, so that application is approved.
Excuse me, Chair, I need to leave the room.
Of course. Do we need to vote on continuing?
In about 15 minutes, but I'm going to ask if she can come back before the officer's presentation. Why she can't? Yeah, we can take a break.
Take a break, 5 minutes, yeah.
Okay, for those online, we're going to take a very quick comfort break.
We're broadcasting again. So thank you very much. We'll move on to our last and final item, which is P24 SO43 Unit 8 Goodson Industrial Use, Wellington Street, Tame. And we only have Mark to speak for us.
Great, thank you. This application is planning permission to convert the building, which is currently in storage use, into a gym. Tame Town Council objects to the proposed development, as in their view, the proposed development would result in a loss of employment on the site. However, it is officers' opinion that the proposed development would not result in a loss of employment. The proposed gym would contribute to the variety of services and facilities that the town has to offer, contributing to the overall vitality and viability of the town centre. Proposed development is not considered to result in any adverse harm to the character and appearance of the area. Limited external alterations are proposed, and would not result in any adverse harm to the amenity of neighbours. The site is sustainably located within the town centre, but does still propose vehicular and cycle parking. The local highway authority do not object to the proposed development. It is your officer's opinion that planning permission is granted this evening, subject to the conditions detailed within section 10 of the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have no public speakers. So if we get straight to questions for Mark. Councillor Arlett.
Yeah, I noticed in the recommendations, item 5, the planning commission. On page 158. Recommendation item 5.
Yes.
I'll let you read it out.
What did it say? What?
Page 158.
Yeah.
Item 10.0 recommendation. Item 5.
Local parking facility.
Well, I would have referred to page 153, item 2.2. It says the use, the external alterations of both the building, the use will be served by 5 parking spaces and a new cycle store. So
we're disagreeing loudly, Ken. I mean, where possible, we put parking spaces in. Great.
No, that's sorry. Is that a question? Question for the officer.
Yeah. So Tame Town Council, who've not come tonight, have suggested that it will be a loss of employment space. But so what was it currently used as?
It's currently in V8 use, which is storage and distribution. So it's got an current use, but obviously what it's moving towards.
And is it going to be
used by a private firm to run a gym?
Right. So that will then create employment, will it not?
Yeah.
Any further questions for Mark?
Has there been any public objection?
Sorry. So that's your questions.
Yeah. So, Mark, is there?
Yeah, I mean, in the report, it outlines the sort of concerns that neighbours have had regarding the potential fallback position that if moving this into a Class E might do, because within Class E you can turn it into another Class B without consent. However, to address that, I've suggested a condition which restricts the use of this new use to exactly basically what it is, which is gym or internal leisure. So it wouldn't be possible for them to say turn it into a takeaway shop or something without consent. So that should address the concerns. That's reasonable as well because neighbours are quite close to the site, so we want to retain control over that. And other issues are noise, potentially from the gym being used. So again, we've got a condition which would address that, requiring a sort of a noise assessment and acoustic assessment to be submitted for us to consider.
No further questions?
No, I propose officer's recommendation.
In an outbreak of harmony at the last minute,
to include item 5.
You can, yeah, well, that's in there, isn't it?
Yep, it's there. So,
I second it.
You're seconding?
I just actually find it rather extraordinary that we're here at all, actually, because I honestly don't see that Tame in this particular instance has much of a case, and this is a straightforward case for acceptance. I would have thought.
I do believe they circulated comments. So.
Okay. All those in favour of the motion to approve this application?
You can all have a group hug now.
We've still got another item left on the agenda.
And we have another item, which is the report on the appeals.
What, another one?
This
is my application.
And so, turn to the back.
I suppose we noted, Chairman.
We've already been sent.
Perhaps if we've, do we need to talk about this? No.
It's an opportunity to discuss anything that you find particularly important, relevant,
Yes.
and then you just note the appeals. Yeah.
So we note,
Just say what a wonderful job the officer's doing.
yeah, so we've got some new appeals, mainly about, these are delegated applications, except for our the one in Chinnock, which I can't really remember. And we've had 2 appeals dismissed, all of which were in respect of delegated decisions, and one of which was an appeal has been allowed. Again, a delegated decision. So satisfactory that 2 out of the 3 appeals have been decided on the officer's judgment. So well done, officers.
I'll take any credit, but yeah.
That concludes the business of our meeting this evening, and we can stop broadcasting.
Okay, thank you, Bertie. Please do we